A very good evening to all of you again. I'm delighted to have His Excellency Dr. Shilpak Ambule, High Commissioner of India to Singapore. We have been working, collaborating on many social projects, and we are delighted to have you, sir, here in person. As you know, this year, I mentioned earlier, we are celebrating SG 60th anniversary of Singapore's birth as a nation. And Singapore and India have unbelievable connections, much of it we know. As mentioned a couple of days ago by Excellency Teo Chee Hean, when he was visiting New Delhi, and Mr. Teo Chee Hean is a senior minister for Singapore, and he mentioned that, the word Singapura is a Sanskrit term. Yes. In the 1800s, he mentioned Singapore was administered from the British, from Kolkata, India. And as you know, Sanskrit is one of the world's oldest languages and has significant cultural and linguistic influence across ASEAN countries. It is my pleasure to share this platform with His Excellency Dr. Shilpak Ambule for a dialogue rooted in one of the world's most dynamic and multi-layered partnerships of the Singapore and India relationship. This partnership has actually grown from modest beginnings into a deeply integrated economic, technological, and strategic alliance. Cooperation between the two sovereign countries began decades ago and has since grown into a relationship that is now highly valuable to both the nations and the broader ASEAN and Indo-Pacific region. Singapore today stands as India's largest trade partner in ASEAN and its top source of FDI, contributing nearly $12 billion in 23-24 alone, and an estimated extraordinary $160 billion cumulatively since the year 2000. So bilateral trade, as we know, has crossed $35 billion. This is not simply commerce. It is a demonstration of trust, alignment, and shared vision between the two great countries. Their cooperation spans across fintech, semiconductors, digital payments, advanced manufacturing, skills, science, space technology, and education. Now, at this critical juncture, as we move towards artificial intelligence era, His Excellency Dr. Ambule is here with me today to share insights on Singapore-India relations and how they will benefit the people from both nations and across Asia. So, if you look at the India-Singapore partnership, and maybe I can come there, easier. Yeah. By the way, I would encourage the QR code for the questions to be put up so that people can submit the questions. Okay, there you go, the QR code is there. So, India-Singapore partnership, Singapore's founding father, the late Mr. Lee, is a revered figure worldwide. Mr. Narendra Modi was known to be one of his greatest fans. In 2014, shortly after Mr. Modi was elected as a Prime Minister, Global Schools sent him a set of Mr. Lee's autobiographical works. And Mr. Lee's biography even has a brief mention about the Global Schools and what we have done in Singapore. But when we see similar thinking and a shared passion for building a developed nation while uplifting the poor by providing employment, housing, and healthcare. Dr. Ambule, my first question to you is, what do you see the impact has Prime Minister Modi brought on the Singapore-India relations? And how do you think this will shape the future of the relationship between the two countries?
Thank you, Mr. Atul. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you today evening. As you all know, Prime Minister Modi is been following the Singapore story for a very long time. In fact, he mentioned to Prime Minister Lawrence Wong in September this year, when Prime Minister Lawrence Wong was on a visit to India, that the change Singapore has seen in one generation, it's rarely happened anywhere else in the world that within such a short time period, people have seen so much of change. change in terms of development, change in terms of prosperity, change in terms of changing people's lives. So he is really very, very taken in by the Singapore story. When he was here in September last year, he mentioned to former Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong that we want to build 100 such Singapores in India. During his first tenure, I still remember when we got the news of Lee Kuan Yew's passing away, Prime Minister Modi insisted that he has to be in Singapore next day morning. So he visited twice in 2015, twice in 2018. Unfortunately, due to COVID, during his second term, he couldn't come here to Singapore. So after the elections last year, he was very keen that Singapore becomes one of the early destinations for his visit. So he visited here in September of 2024, and we decided to elevate the relationship to a comprehensive strategic partnership. Similarly, Prime Minister Lawrence Wong wanted to reciprocate that sentiment and feeling. So after the elections here in May of 2025, he also wanted to visit India very early on. And so we had a visit in September of this year, and we signed the roadmap for a comprehensive strategic partnership. As you rightly mentioned, this is the 60th year of Singapore's independence. It also marks the 60th anniversary of our diplomatic ties. And we had inaugurated the celebrations of this occasion when President Thurman visited India in early January this year, and we also had jointly launched the logo for the 60th anniversary.
Thank you, Ambassador. Hi, Commissioner. And my next question is also asked by one of the panelists, one of the audience members here, and I will bring that question into this concept of skills and industry alignment. Singapore is a leader in semiconductor manufacturing and testing. It has more than 9 of the world's top semiconductor manufacturing plants and supplies over 30% of global semiconductor consumption. Now, while it has spent literally about 30 years in building this sector, a couple of years ago, we saw the then Vice President, Kamala Harris, began a working tour with ASEAN countries to scale up semiconductor production, and particularly in South Asia, Japan, and Singapore, and somewhat hedged to some of the uncertainties. And some time ago, just I think maybe last year, Prime Minister Modi also signed a MOU with Singapore to elevate the semiconductor ecosystem, the robotics, and advanced manufacturing. And this is also a question from one of the audience members. Would you like to share some thoughts about how this is going?
We have a very unique mechanism with Singapore, what we call as the India-Singapore Ministerial Roundtable. It has had 3 iterations where 10 ministers, 6 from the Singapore side and 4 from the Indian side, meet every year for a forenoon. It is also parallelly followed up by an India-Singapore Business Roundtable. So when the ISMR met in August of last year, we identified advanced manufacturing as one of the pillars for cooperation between the 2 countries. And this was taken forward during Prime Minister Modi's visit here when we signed an agreement for semiconductor ecosystem development partnership. What that meant was, of course, Singapore has many mother fabs, but the ecosystem around it, be it the tool makers, gas suppliers, chemical suppliers, material makers, that system is very well developed and mature in Singapore. So since we had decided to embark on our own semiconductor journey, both in terms of OSAT units and fabs in Gujarat and Assam, we also wanted to build an ecosystem which, like Singapore has built over the last 30, 40 years. So this is where the collaboration started. And when Prime Minister Modi was here, in fact, Prime Minister Lawrence Wong accompanied him to one of the semiconductor clusters here in Ang Mo Kio, in one of the MSMEs of Singapore. And from there it took off. We have formally a semiconductor dialogue, which is headed by the PERMSEC here in MTI and our Secretary Meti, the first iteration of which was held in November of last year. Our Meti Minister, Mr. Ashwini Vaishnaw, was here last month. He spent a good 2 days here not only looking at the semiconductor ecosystem, but also what you need to get right in this industry is the whole skilling environment, the skilling part, the technicians you require, the engineers you require. And Singapore has actually done that very well, starting from the universities, the polytechnics, and the ITE, and how the industry is closely integrated into that system. So it was followed up by the visit by Secretary Meti, who was here last week. We had a second semiconductor ecosystem dialogue, and Mr. Krishnan also did visit a few of these polytechnics and also the research labs with A-Star and Applied Materials in NTU and NUS, and we are going to see how we can take that forward.
Thank you. Thank you, Thank you, High Commissioner. I think we have an audience question, very interesting, on healthcare sector. How do you see India and Singapore partnering together in medical and healthcare sector?
Well, healthcare is one of the pillars of our collaboration. We have a mechanism between the two health ministries which meet regularly. We have identified a few niche areas for collaboration, including community medicine, healthcare, digitalization of healthcare records, as well as delivery of precision medicine. We are also trying to see if there can be collaboration between the hospitals and the research team. So it's a work in progress, and hopefully this year we'll see some concrete projects come out.
Thank you. I think the next question is more generic. This is about what can Singapore and India bring together? What can Singapore bring to India and India bring to Singapore in terms of competencies and areas of collaboration?
I forgot to mention one point is this whole AI space, artificial intelligence. We are doing the AI Impact Summit in February, and both the Minister and the Secretary Meti also spent enough time speaking with the Singapore side on this issue, and Singapore is actively participating in this summit and also part of the few initial workshops which are going on in preparation for the summit. The investment corridor between India and Singapore is quite active, both in terms of the foreign portfolio investors based here, but also a lot of the Singaporean funds which are actively looking at expanding their presence in India, scouting for new opportunities in India. Both Temasek and GIC have openly declared that they want to increase their portfolio exposure to India. In fact, since you mentioned former Senior Minister Teo Chee Han, who is the chairman of Temasek, he and the senior management of Temasek were in India last week. Mr. Teo Chee Han also delivered the Atal Bihari Vajpayee lecture in our foreign ministry. They had good meetings in Delhi with our ministers. He even called on the Prime Minister, and they had few business meetings in Mumbai. So that corridor is also very active. A lot of Singaporean companies are also looking at expanding their investments and presence across different geographies within India. You have the likes of CapitaLand, Sabrana Jurong, Mapletree, trying to actively look at opportunities in different states of India.
Thank you, sir. We talked earlier in the day on UPI and the success and the enormous transaction value and the number of transactions being conducted. And obviously, it is significantly reducing the physical currency usage, particularly by slowing down cash in circulation, and also reducing the demand for cash in everyday transaction. Is there a plan for a digital rupee? I know there have been some announcements, but is there any likelihood in the next 4 or 5 years we can see any emergence of digital rupee?
2 points here. One is this whole UPI Pay Now linkage. It's been doing well. The remittance part of it is really picked up. The merchants part of it is expanding. Initially, we had onboarded 6 Indian banks. It has expanded to 21 Indian banks now. So that is kind of a work in progress, and also both sides are actively trying to do more on that front. We have what we call as cross-border digital, CBDC, the RBI's digital currency. They are trying to do more and more transactions. They were here for the fintech festival. We had a big booth and a big program to kind of propagate its use. But it's also a work in progress for now.
Right, sir. Space is an interesting area where India has been demonstrating extraordinary capabilities. And the way ISRO's launch of Singapore satellites recently also demonstrate how country is able to partner with other countries and take the strengths in the space into other countries. Are there any collaborations likelihood in the area of space between Singapore and India beyond this?
Well, we have a very vibrant space sector in India. Also, the startup sector in the space domain is also quite active. So we have a few Singaporean funds who have invested in few of our space startups like Skyroot and Agnikul, which are doing very well. Besides, we do have a government-to-government and institution-to-institution collaboration between InSpace in India and the relevant agency in Singapore. And they do keep meeting very frequently and identifying new projects for collaboration.
And sir, there was one question about urbanization and removal of poverty. Are there any potential collaborations between Singapore and India to either in the technological form or in the form of social policies, anything that we can take from here that can help us elevate and achieve our aim?
We have been getting a lot of state delegations, chief ministers or ministers dealing with urban development from different states of India to Singapore. And we have been studying the best practices. Few of the town planners like Sabrana Jurong, some of the agencies like PUB and JTC are actively providing consultancy services to few states in India to see how we can learn from the best practices here in Singapore.
The next question is on Andaman and Nicobar and its influence in the Indian Ocean. What role can India play in keeping peace in the Indian Ocean?
Well, we have been the first responders for some years now, starting with the tsunami, and even today, when we had the crisis in the Gulf region, our Navy has been very active in providing disaster relief or even kind of security patrols for certain commercial vessels, and that role will continue and grow. On that note, our defense and security relationship with Singapore is also very strong. It's the understated part of the relationship, but we do have very frequent naval ship visits. We have our PATIs also landing at Paya Lebar. So that part of the relationship is also very strong. We have the longest bilateral naval exercise going on with Singapore every year. SITMEX exercise is also going on. So that front is also very, very active.
Thank you. Yeah, I've been to some of the Navy ships. Amazing technology, amazing vessels, and I think the kind of admiration we have for various naval exercises is really amazing. And the last question I would like to take, and if anybody else would like to post a question, please do scan the QR code. And this is on BRICS. So how do you see India and the BRICS relevance, particularly in the context of Global South?
Since we were talking about Andaman, Nicobar and the naval bit, I'll just add one point. We have signed an agreement with Singapore on a green and digital shipping corridor. And what that means is as ships move towards greener fuels, they will need some bunkering stations. So we in India have identified 3 ports, Paradip, Tuticorin and Kandla, where we will do green fuel bunkering, and that is where we have a collaboration with Singapore. So that is a new area where we are actively looking to collaborate. Well, whereas BRICS is concerned, I think we became part of BRICS very early on when we thought that like-minded countries did not have sufficient voice in the world. So that collaboration predates in fact, the G20, which came to the global platform so prominently. BRICS predates that in a way. And so we have certain issues on which we do have similarity of views. There are certain issues on which we disagree, but we do, on the balance, find benefit of being part of BRICS and and that platform.
Okay, we still got some exciting questions coming in, and that is more on, I think it partly you answered it with the new maritime policy in India. How will Singapore navigate the new ecosystem, and what's the assessment of new maritime policy as compared to Singapore's? Any pros and cons?
Well, our shipping minister was here in March for the Singapore Maritime Week. And the reason was we came with a very big delegation. If you see what has happened in the Indian Parliament in the last 5-6 months, we have come out with 5 new legislative reforms in the maritime, shipping, and the port sector. We are trying to enhance coastal shipping. We are trying to make it easy for ships to have Indian flags. We are trying to connect and develop more ports, larger ports. And in that, Singapore definitely plays an important part, both in terms of the port operator, but also how they have developed their maritime sector in terms of ship ownership, ship flagging, and other areas. So there is a lot of scope for collaboration, and we are actually working on that front.
Thank you, sir. I think that has been amazing questions coming in from the audience as well. Thank you so much. And last question to you, sir, is you've been here now and during your tenure, do you see any super high impact initiative that got initiated while you were physically here between Singapore and India? And were you do you expect that to kind of take a bigger form and shape?
Well, I think what has happened in the last year and a half is people used to ask me, investors going from Singapore, where in India should we go? But if you see in the last 2.5 years, we have at least had 8 state delegations at either chief minister level or industries minister level. We have 3 chief ministers wanting to come early next year. So that is an area where I find that the states have now started coming out in India in terms of attracting investment, competing for investment, and that is a very good sign. And this is where I think if India has to grow, it has to achieve its goal of Viksit Bharat, has to become the 3rd and 2nd largest economy in the world. I think states also need to deliver, and that realization is coming within the states. So that is one sector where I feel that states coming out is a very good thing for India's development.
Thank you. I think that brings us to the end of the panel discussion. Thank you, High Commissioner, for joining us for this fireside chat. And maybe request Frank, if you can come to the stage, we can have a group photo with High Commissioner. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. But one word for Atul, I think he doesn't say so many things, but what he has done here, is for all of you to see. He runs a very efficient organization, a very good school. And so the government of India conferred on him the Pravasi Bharatiya Samman early this year.